Alright, so I ain't know who needs to hear this, but there is a difference, a big difference between being broke and not having a lot of money, right? Because I feel like in our society, I'm sure you know this as well, is that there's this focus, this heavy focus on how much money do you have? Whether it's watching some dating show and a lady says something like, "Oh, we got to be making six figures," or whether she goes to a party and somebody's asking, "So what do you do?" We have this focus on how much money people make. But the reality is that it doesn't matter how much money you make or how much money you have. What matters is how you handle the money you have. Because if you have £100 and you can manage that £100, you're doing far better than somebody with £1,000,000 that can't manage it. So though somebody who says they've got £1,000,000 sounds really impressive and really exciting and they're going to get all the attention, if that person cannot handle the money they have, they're going to be broke. But if you have £100, it doesn't sound as exciting. Nobody's really checking for you in that kind of way. Some people might even laugh at you. "Is that all you got?" But if you can figure out how to make that £100 work for you, you're doing far better than the guy with £1,000,000 that can't. So let me give you an example, a real life example in the not too long ago. So once upon a time, there was a man called Michael Jackson. And Michael Jackson grew up to be probably the greatest artist of certainly my generation, maybe even ever. I mean, by any metric you use to measure success, he hit that. He was super popular. His music sold by the millions. I mean, this guy would go on stage, stand there for like 5 minutes, not saying a single word, just standing there. And people would be losing their minds. People would just be screaming, fainting. Dude's just standing there. Ain't said a single word, just standing there. That's how popular he was. That's how loved this guy was. And this guy lived a lifestyle that you might read about in a fairy tale or something. Man had a mansion called the Neverland Ranch. And this place had its own zoo, its own theme park. Like, this guy had royalty on speed dial. Like, how many people you know could just be like, "Yeah, I'm going to call up Princess Diana and have a chat"? The immense popularity and love for his music that Michael Jackson had is something that most of us will probably never see again. And that's not taking away anything from artists now who are doing really well, really popular. But you got to understand, Michael Jackson was a phenomenon. Matter of fact, I can all but guarantee that every single one of your favorite artists right now was a fan of Michael Jackson. And even if they weren't a fan of Michael Jackson influenced them in some way. That's how everywhere Michael Jackson was. However, at the time of his death in 2009, at 50 years old, Michael Jackson was in debt by over $500 million. In fact, he was actually planning a series of concerts to try and clear his debt, but he died before that could happen. The point I'm making is that even with all that money and access to resources, Michael Jackson was clearly not handling his finances too well. Now, there's definitely a conversation to be had about why that is, the effects of growing up in the industry from a child star to an adult star. That sounded like something else, but you know what I mean. And these are important conversations to be had about our upbringing and how it affects us in our adult years. But the bottom line is, if you mismanage your finances, you will be broke. Now, hopefully you're not mismanaging your finances to $500 million worth of debt, but any debt you leave behind, best believe that just because you dead, don't mean people don't want their money. Anyway, to wrap this all up, all I'm saying is, instead of asking, "So how much money do you make?" or "How much money do you have?" maybe a better question would be, "Hey, how you feeling today?"